All information contained in this podcast is general in nature and does not consider your individual circumstances. You should consider the appropriateness of this information with regards to your individual objectives, financial situation, and needs. Welcome to Sharing More Than the Sheets, a podcast to help you and your partner make better financial and lifestyle decisions so that you can both focus on the things that you love. I'm your host, Michael Khouri, financial planner, green thumb, husband, and just dad. This segment is called Michael's Magic Moment. It's my opportunity to play a little snippet from one of our previous episodes, which resonated with our listeners, that I received feedback from, or I felt really had an impact on some people's lives. Hope you enjoy it. Change is change. Sometimes we inflict the change on ourselves or on our circumstances. Sometimes we have no choice over the matter, and things around us change. The economy, the environment, our work, our friends, our family, our health, and there's different ways of dealing with change. Today I'm going back to an episode that I did, episode 125, called Dealing with Change. And to me, this one's a big one because as a financial advisor, I'm contacted regularly when something changes in someone's life. So they've just got a new job, they've just had a baby, they've just bought a house, they've just received an inheritance. Something's happened. I would probably say that's probably the reason we're contacted half the time, if not more. And it's very interesting to see how people deal with these different circumstances. And I find it very, 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 I find it interesting because to a lot of people, the way they deal with change is very dependent on their life circumstances, their personalities, and just the way that they perceive things in life. In this episode, I go through a couple of different things which I feel most of us can benefit from, and there are things that I've just seen just when it comes to change and how people have dealt with it, because you may know some people that you know in your life that deal with change really well and some that don't. No one's perfect. And it's just about knowing how to adapt, what to do, who to speak to, and just knowing that you're making the best possible decisions so that you can deal with that change. As humans, we have this tendency to love consistency, to love routine. You know, as babies, when a baby is born, routine, especially to first-time parents, they'll always hear those words. And it's true. We love routine. We love a time that we get up in the morning. We love a particular coffee at a particular time of the day. So routine is great, but it can also make us very, very stale. Now, when change happens, the first tip or the first recommendation I'd give is just to think, what's the worst that can actually happen? Because really, for example, you go into a shop, the coffee shop's closed. That can frustrate a couple of people because especially if it's your favorite coffee shop. But if there's another coffee shop just 100 meters down the road, as frustrating as that may be for some people, if you just think, look, what's the worst that can actually happen? Yes, I'm going to have to walk 100 meters or drive. Yes, that coffee might be terrible because it's not what I'm used to, but that's probably the worst that's going to happen. Or yes, it might be an extra $1 or $2, but that's it. It's the same thing if something is a bit more serious. For example, let's say you lose your job. What's the worst that can happen? Now, obviously, we know what the worst is, and it can be very detrimental to someone's financial situation, especially if that person doesn't find work for a while. But for most people, if you actually start talking to them about their skills and how in demand they actually are with their type of job, most of the time, they'll tell you the worst that can happen is they're going to have no work or no income for about 3 or 4 weeks. And that's something that most people can deal with, especially if they've managed things properly. The second thing is to ask yourself, how much of the situation can you actually control? Now, when we are in a situation, especially when change is thrown at us, straight away, a lot of us start to think, okay, how can I control this? What can I do to stop this from happening? But you need to ask yourself this question as well, because if none of it is in your control, then stop trying to change it or stop trying to avoid the change. For example, a pandemic, that wasn't in our control. Another example is being sacked from work. You know, maybe some of that's in your control if you can try to convince your boss to give you your job back. But if you were sacked, is that really a job that you want? The other part about it as well is a breakup. You know, if somebody just doesn't want to be with you and they break up with you, Yes, maybe there's a bit of that you can control. There could have been a misunderstanding. Maybe there are things you need to work on. Maybe the other person was a bit irrational when they broke up with you. But really, how much of that can you actually control? So by understanding what you can control and what you can't, it gives you a bit more guidance, and it makes it a lot more obvious as to what things you should focus on and what things you shouldn't focus on. Of course, this is easier said than done, especially when we're talking about breakups, because I'm a financial advisor here on a microphone talking to you about relationships and being dumped. So obviously it's not that easy to sometimes, look at what you can and can't control, and emotionally it's not that straightforward, but I think you get my point. Once you understand what you can control, you can then accept the parts that you have to accept, and you can then reframe, and you can then look at what you need to focus on and what you need to pivot to. For example, let's just go back to the coffee shop scenario, because a lot of us love our coffee. You go to a coffee shop every day for 6 years, and then that coffee shop closes. Now, most people would freak out. I'd probably freak out. Okay, what am I going to do? Well, I'm going to find another coffee shop. Or your favorite barber. You've been going to this barber for 6 years, and suddenly that barber decides to close up and start selling cars. What do you do? Like, there's only this one person knows how to cut your hair. Like, you haven't gone to anyone else in like 10 years. And that would, stress a lot of people out. But the barbers quit. The barbers closed their shop. So you can't change that. And the best thing you can do is accept that they're not cutting hair anymore and reframe. Think, who else can I cut? Who else is going to cut my hair? Who else can I try out? Who else can I see? What else can I do? This applies to coffee. This probably applies to relationships as well. But the second you accept the change and reframe and think, okay, what am I going to focus on? You are going to be much more likely to succeed than trying to wage war on an unwinnable war. The fourth thing is to celebrate the positives. Look at the positives in the situation. I know everyone's going to say this, it's, look at the positives. Always try to find a silver lining. And that's probably one of the easiest things that's easier said than done, especially for someone that's on the outside. But seriously, think about the positives. Think about the things that, yes, you've been sacked. But think about the positives. Were you really that in love with your boss or your employer or your work environment or the type of duties you were doing? Were you really that in love with it? Think about the positives. Sometimes it takes change for us to move to something better. There's a quote, I don't know who said it, but it was essentially, and I don't know if it's a religious quote, but it basically says every time I was being knocked back, I wasn't being rejected, I was being pointed towards something better. And to me, I think of that so many times. Think about the positives. Now, for those that are normally optimistic, those that are glass half full people, they're going to find this very easy to do. For those that are normally glass half empty people, for them, it might be a bit more, difficult. But once you do that, and once you've reframed, and once you've worked out what you can control and what you can't, you then take action. You then do something. An option is just to sit at home and feel sorry for yourself for 6 months. But another option is to take action, to understand, okay, what are the things that I can control? What am I going to do with that time that I have or with these opportunities? And what's the next step? Are you going to fix up your resume? Are you going to look at something else to invest in? Are you going to start Googling barbers in your area to see which barbers are you going to see? Who are you going to see first? Let's look up their reviews. Let's talk to friends that have similar hair as me to see who cuts their hair, because maybe I'm going to find someone better. And with all this, it's very, very important to make sure that you're managing your stress. Stress levels can creep up on us. Anxiety levels can creep up on us. It can happen without us realizing. And sometimes it takes another person to tell you. And that's where it's important to seek support from those around you, especially if you are suffering serious levels of anxiety or stress, whether it's you contacting Lifeline on 13 11 14, whether you're talking to a partner, whether you're seeking some sort of support or talking to someone about it. That's all really, really important. But the other things you can do is just meditation, relaxing, staying physically fit, just health 101, just the basics, the things that we should be doing. I talk to so many people that their life changes for whatever reason, whether they, lose their jobs or they can't work for medical reasons, and suddenly they start focusing on their health because it's something they were never able to focus on. So these are all really important physical health is just as important as mental health, if not more important. But really, I think they go hand in hand. They're equally important as each other because you can't focus on the physical and ignore the mental and vice versa. But again, change is good. Change is great. We need change. Sometimes, and I was talking to my client this afternoon, and something he said is that change is happening faster than ever. And I think it's true. I think that things are changing around us. Financial markets, technology, health, the economy, the world. It's just happening at a faster rate, or at least I feel it is anyway. So with all this that's happening, if you just sit and you essentially, sit on the sidelines and expect things to change, if you're not willing to change, and if you're not willing to deal with the change that's happening, then you can't expect yourself to come out on top. One of my favorite examples of change is that of Blockbuster. But Blockbuster was a great, we used to go there to get videos, to get DVDs, and they were popular and they were making a lot of money. And then technology came out, and technology evolved, and Blockbuster chose not to go with the times. They chose not to focus on the whole digital technology, and they still kept selling videos and DVDs. And look how that turned out for them. Another big example is Kodak, I think. Kodak didn't embrace change as fast as they should have, and they sort of just expected things to change by themselves in the business. And Kodak really suffered when digital cameras came out and people didn't need to develop photos anymore in phones. And, the cameras in our phones suddenly became so powerful and so advanced. So if you look at history, if you look at anyone that's dealt with change and how they did it, you'll find those that were successful, those that actually saw it as an advantage, are those that did these things. Those that just buried their heads in the sand and felt sorry for themselves are the ones that really were behind and didn't really move forward. So today, if there's anything I want you to take out of this episode, is when you are dealt with change, when you're dealt with that card that you weren't really expecting, just think, what's the worst that can happen? Work out how much of it you can control. Accept and reframe. Focus on what you need to. Celebrate the positives. Take action. Manage your stress and seek support where you need to really make sure that you're dealing with the change and you're coming out on top so that you can feel better, do better, and be better. Thanks for joining us on Sharing More Than the Sheets. Please make sure you subscribe to be updated with future episode releases, and feel free to share this episode with any friends or family that you think it might benefit. Please visit us at sharingmorethanthesheets.com.au to submit questions or requests for future podcast topics. These podcasts have been brought to you by Better Financial Planning Australia. To book a 15-minute phone chat, visit betterfinancialplanning.com.au.